The quantum relay blinked to life on the bridge of the TNS Defiance, casting an eerie blue glow across Admiral Jake Morrison's weathered face. As flagship of the Terran Empire's Outer Rim Defense Fleet, the Defiance had witnessed humanity's expansion across the stars over the past decade. But the message about to arrive would challenge everything they had built. "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council, Admiral," announced Captain Lisa Hayes, her voice steady despite the unusual circumstance. Council communications were rare and rarely beneficial to humanity's interests. Morrison straightened his uniform and nodded. "On screen." The holographic display flickered, resolving into the imposing figure of Chancellor Veltar, the Aranian representative and current head of the Galactic Council. Behind him stood several shadowy figures representing the elder races that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. "Terran authorities," Veltar began, his mandibles clicking with barely contained disdain. "The Council has deliberated on the matter of humanity's unchecked expansion and militarization. Your species has been granted considerable leniency since your emergence into interstellar society. But this period of tolerance has reached its conclusion." Morrison exchanged a glance with Hayes. This was no routine diplomatic message. Veltar continued, his 8 eyes gleaming. "The following demands are non-negotiable. First, all Terran military vessels exceeding constraint, Class 3, will be immediately decommissioned or surrendered to Council oversight. Second, your colonies beyond the Orion Spur will be abandoned within 1 standard galactic cycle. Third, a tribute of 20% of all Terran resource production will be remitted to the Council Treasury annually." The bridge fell silent. These weren't demands. They were a declaration of subjugation. Failure to comply within 30 standard rotations will result in corrective action by Council forces. Veltar's mandibles spread in what passed for an Aranian smile. "We trust you will make the wise decision." Council transmission concluded. The hologram disappeared, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Corrective action," Hayes repeated, her voice hollow. "That's a euphemism for invasion if I've ever heard one." Morrison's jaw tightened as he turned to his communications officer. "Secure channel to Earth. Priority Alpha. The Emperor needs to hear this immediately." 20 light-years away, Emperor Alexander Kane stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Imperial Palace in New Geneva. Earth gleamed below, the cradle of humanity, now merely one jewel in the crown of the Terran Empire, an empire that had formed not from conquest, but necessity after the Proxima Colony massacre 30 years earlier, when alien raiders had slaughtered the defenseless scientific outpost. Earth's fractured nations had finally united under a single banner for mutual protection. The door to his private chamber slid open, and General Patricia Stone entered, her expression grave. "Your Majesty, we've received an emergency transmission from the Defiance. Admiral Morrison requests an immediate war council." Kane turned, his eyes narrowing. "Morrison isn't one for alarmism. Summon the Joint Chiefs and the colonial representatives. War Chamber. 1 hour." As the leadership of humanity gathered in the obsidian-walled war room beneath the Imperial Palace, Morrison's hologram stood at the center of the table, having just relayed the Council's ultimatum. "This is tantamount to a declaration of war," said Admiral Helen Carter, commander of the Home Fleet. "They know we can't possibly accept these terms. The Council has ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years," noted colonial representative Jian Wei from Alpha Centauri. "Younger species either fall in line or face extinction. That's been their pattern." Emperor Kane remained silent, his fingers steepled before him as he processed the situation. Finally, he spoke. "What's our military readiness?" General Stone activated the strategic holodisplay. "We have approximately 1,200 warships spread across 27 colonial systems. The Home Fleet consists of another 500 vessels. Against the Council's combined forces," she hesitated, Intelligence estimates they could field upwards of 100,000 ships if they fully mobilize. A murmur of dismay rippled through the chamber. "Then conventional warfare is suicide," said Kane flatly. "What about Project Prometheus?" The room fell silent. Dr. Benjamin Clark, lead scientist of the Empire's most classified weapons program, cleared his throat nervously. "The prototypes are functional, Your Majesty, but they haven't been field tested. We're talking about weapons that can alter the fabric of reality itself." "And that's precisely what we need." Kane's voice was steel. "Dr. Clark, you have full authorization. Deploy everything we have: quantum torpedoes, stealth hull technology, and the Genesis Protocol." "Your Majesty," Admiral Carter interjected, "the Genesis Protocol is theoretical at best. The power requirements alone are within our capabilities." Dr. Clark interrupted. "But the ethical implications of weaponizing space-time distortion—" "The ethical implications of extinction are far worse," Kane cut in. "I'm not asking for opinions. This is an order. Humanity will not bow, and we will not surrender our colonies or our sovereignty." He stood, addressing the entire council. "As of this moment, the Terran Empire is at war with the Galactic Council. We will not strike first, but when they come, and they will come, we'll be ready." Morrison's hologram nodded grimly. "The Defiance stands ready. Your Majesty, what are your orders?" "Return to Earth with all haste. Admiral, we need every ship for what's coming." Kane's eyes swept the room. "Everyone has their assignments. This war will determine whether humanity has a future among the stars. Make no mistake, we are fighting for our very existence." As the War Council dispersed, Admiral Carter lingered behind with the Emperor. "Alexander," she said softly, using his name rather than his title, a privilege from their days as fellow officers before his ascension. "You know what the Genesis Protocol can do. If we unleash that kind of power—" "I know." Kane's shoulders sagged slightly, a rare display of the burden he carried. "But if we don't, humanity becomes just another subjugated species, stripped of its potential. I won't allow that, not while I draw breath." In the depths of council space, Warlord Thakran of the Drakari studied the holographic display of human territory with contempt. As military commander of the council's forces, he had overseen the subjugation of a dozen species over his 3-century career. Humans would be no different. "The Fifth Armada stands ready. Chancellor," he reported to Veltar's image. 2,000 warships, more than sufficient to make an example of these upstarts. Veltar's mandibles clicked in approval. "Proceed with the operation, Warlord. Target their Proxima Centauri colony first. It holds symbolic value to them. Once it falls, their resolve should crumble." "And if it doesn't?" Thakran asked, his scaled head tilting. "Then we escalate until it does." Veltar's compound eyes gleamed. "The Council has not maintained order for 2 millennia by showing weakness. These humans must learn their place." The communication ended, and Thakran turned to his subordinates. "Set course for the Proxima system. Maximum warp." For 2 weeks, the Terran Empire prepared feverishly for war. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with weapon systems. Colonial militias drilled day and night. On Earth, Dr. Clark's team worked without rest, loading the newly developed quantum torpedoes onto every capital ship. At Proxima Station, Commander Ryan Brooks oversaw the final phase of a different defense strategy. Under the cover of routine asteroid mining operations, his teams had seeded the approach vectors to the colony with thousands of stealth mines, virtually undetectable until activated. "Final minefield grid is in place, sir," reported his executive officer. "If they come through the primary jump points, they're in for a nasty surprise." Brooks nodded, staring at the tactical display. "Let's hope it's enough to buy us time. The quantum torpedoes are still en route from Earth." "You think they'll really attack us first? We're a scientific and agricultural colony." Barely any military presence. That's exactly why they'll target us, Brooks replied grimly. We're a symbol of human expansion, and we're vulnerable. At least, that's what they think. The warning came 3 days later. Long-range sensors detected a massive energy surge as the Council's Fifth Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima system. "Battle stations!" Brooks ordered, his heart pounding as red alert klaxons blared throughout the station. "All civilian vessels seek shelter behind Proxima 4. This is not a drill." He opened a channel to the approaching fleet, knowing what had to be done. "Attention Council vessels. This is Commander Ryan Brooks of Proxima Station. You are entering sovereign Terran space. Reverse course immediately." The response came moments later, a visual transmission showing Warlord Thakran in his battle armor. "Commander Brooks, I bear the authority of the Galactic Council. Your colony has been deemed in violation of Council directive. Surrender your installation and prepare for evacuation." Brooks met the alien's gaze steadily. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. Warlord, Proxima remains under Imperial protection." Thakran's lipless mouth twisted in what might have been amusement. "Your empire is a fiction, human. You have no protection against what comes. This is your final warning. And this is yours." Brooks responded. As he cut the transmission, he gave the order they'd been waiting for. "Activate the minefield. All defense platforms. Prepare to engage." Across the vast expanse of space surrounding Proxima Station, thousands of previously dormant mines awakened. The first wave of Council ships, advancing confidently toward what they believed was an easy target, suddenly found themselves in the midst of a devastating trap. Hundreds of explosions blossomed in the vacuum as the minefield claimed its first victims. Council ships, their shields calibrated for conventional weapons, offered little protection against the specialized quantum phase warheads that phased directly through their defenses before detonating. "They're breaking formation," reported Brooks's tactical officer. "Attempting evasive maneuvers." "Now for Phase 2, Brooks ordered. "Launch hit and fade squadrons. Target their command vessels." From behind, Proxima for Free's moon, emerged several dozen small, agile fighter craft. Another surprise the Council forces hadn't anticipated. Using the chaos of the minefield detonations as cover, the Terran fighters streaked through the disorganized Council fleet, launching precision strikes against communication arrays and bridge sections. Aboard his flagship, Warlord Thakran raged as reports of mounting casualties poured in. What should have been a simple show of force had turned into a debacle. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 317, Warlord, his second-in-command reported, unable to keep the shock from his voice. "Almost a quarter of the Armada, and we haven't even reached their main defensive line." Thakran slammed his fist on the command console. "Impossible! These are primitive vessels with primitive weapons." "Sir, these don't match any weapon signatures in our database. They're using some kind of phase-shifting technology that bypasses our shields entirely." Another explosion rocked the flagship as a Terran fighter squadron made a strafing run across its upper hull. "Enough!" Thakran snarled. "Concentrate all fire on that station. Reduce it to atoms. Show these humans the price of defiance." The remaining Council ships regrouped, bringing their immense firepower to bear on Proxima Station. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes lanced across space, only to be met by a shimmering barrier that absorbed or deflected each attack. "Their station shields shouldn't be capable of this," Thakran's science officer protested. "They're using technology beyond their development level." On Proxima Station, Brooks allowed himself a grim smile as the experimental shield generators held firm. "Status of the quantum torpedo launchers?" "Online and locked, Commander. Awaiting your order." Brooks took a deep breath. These weapons had never been used in actual combat before. "Target their command ship. Fire." From Proxima Station's main weapons array, a single projectile launched, small and seemingly insignificant against the massive Council flagship. As it approached, it began to emit a strange, pulsating glow, warping the very light around it. When it detonated, the effect was unlike anything either side had witnessed in warfare. Rather than a conventional explosion, a sphere of distorted reality expanded outward from the impact point. Matter within its radius didn't burn or shatter. It simply ceased to exist in normal space-time. Nearly one-third of Thakran's flagship vanished, the clean edge of the sphere cutting through the massive vessel as if it were paper. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as atmosphere vented into space. But the damage was catastrophic. "What? What was that?" Thakran demanded, clinging to his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "Unknown, Warlord," came the shaken reply. "But our engines are offline, weapons at 30%, and we've lost over 400 crew members." Thakran stared at the tactical display in disbelief as more quantum torpedoes launched from the station, each one claiming another Council vessel. His vaunted Fifth Armada, the pride of Council forces, was being systematically dismantled by a supposedly inferior enemy. "All ships," he ordered, his voice hollow with the unfamiliar taste of defeat. "Disengage and retreat to Rallying Point Delta. We cannot win this engagement." As the remnants of the Fifth Armada fled the Proxima system, leaving behind the wreckage of nearly 800 ships, Commander Brooks allowed himself to breathe again. "Damage report," he requested, surveying his command center where exhausted officers continued at their posts. "Minimal, sir. Our shields held 27 casualties among the fighter squadrons, but no losses at the station itself." Brooks nodded, then opened a channel to Earth. "Proxima Station to Imperial Command. The Council fleet has retreated. We've won the first battle." When the news reached Earth, there was no celebration in the war room, only grim satisfaction and the knowledge that this was merely the beginning. "Thakran will return with a larger force," Admiral Carter predicted. "The Council won't accept this defeat." Emperor Kane nodded. "Which is why we must capitalize on this victory immediately. Admiral Morrison, deploy the stealth hull technology to all frontline vessels. Dr. Clark, I want Genesis protocol devices distributed to every major colony world." "Your Majesty," Dr. Clark protested. "The Genesis protocol was designed as a last resort. Each device can reconfigure several cubic kilometers of space-time. If misused, then we won't misuse them," Kane interrupted. "But our people need to be able to defend themselves when, not if, the Council returns." The Emperor turned to the strategic display, where the vast expanse of human territory seemed fragile against the overwhelming reach of Council space. "Our advantage is surprise and innovation," he continued. "They've underestimated us once. They won't make that mistake again. Our only hope is to hit them hard enough that they reconsider the cost of this war." Over the next month, Warlord Thakran faced the most humiliating experience of his long military career, standing before the full Galactic Council to explain his defeat at Proxima. "These humans have developed weapons beyond their technological level," he insisted to the assembled representatives of the elder races. "They've somehow harnessed quantum manipulation in ways our scientists thought impossible for their species." Chancellor Veltar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Are you suggesting these primitives have surpassed our own technological capabilities, Warlord? That seems rather convenient to explain your failure." Thakran bristled. "I lost 800 ships and nearly 20,000 warriors. Chancellor, there was nothing convenient about it. Their weapons bypass our shields completely. They've developed some kind of space-time distortion device that—" "Enough excuses," interrupted the Volus representative, his breather mask hissing with each word. "The fact remains that a simple subjugation action has turned into an embarrassment for the Council." "The solution is obvious," said the Kravix delegate, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. "If these humans possess dangerous technology, we must crush them completely before they can become a genuine threat. Not just a punitive action. Total war. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council chamber. Then, it is decided, Veltar concluded. The Grand Armada will be assembled for the first time in 7 centuries. All member species will contribute ships and troops. We will eradicate this human problem once and for all. As the council session disbanded, Thakron approached Veltar privately. Chancellor, I must advise caution. These humans are not like other species we've subjugated. They fight differently. Veltar regarded the warlord with his multiple eyes. Are you afraid of these primitives, Thakron? Not afraid, the Drakari warrior replied carefully. Respectful of their capabilities. Underestimating them cost me nearly half my armada. Then we shall not underestimate them again, Veltar said dismissively. The Grand Armada will number 100,000 vessels, the greatest concentration of military power in the galaxy. No species can stand against such might. Throughout human space, the 30 days following the Battle of Proxima Station saw feverish preparation. Every ship capable of bearing arms was pressed into service. Civilian facilities were hardened against orbital bombardment. The advanced technologies developed under Project Prometheus were distributed as widely as possible. On the colony world of New Eden, Captain Danny Martinez oversaw the installation of a Genesis protocol device within the planetary defense grid. Unlike the quantum torpedoes, which created localized distortions, this technology could reshape reality on a massive scale. Once activated, how long do we have to evacuate? He asked the science team. Approximately 15 minutes, replied the lead technician. After that, the distortion field will expand to encompass the entire approach vector to the planet. Anything caught within it will be reconfigured. Martinez studied the innocuous-looking device, a simple metallic cube that belied its reality-warping capabilities. And there's no way to predict exactly how space-time will be reshaped? That's the point. Captain, unpredictability is our advantage. The Council's tactical computers can't predict what can't be modeled mathematically. Similar preparations took place across every human world and outpost. But the greatest concentration of forces gathered at Wolf 359, a star system strategically positioned between Earth and the expected approach vector of the Council's Grand Armada. Admiral Morrison, aboard the newly retrofitted Defiance, surveyed the assembled human fleet. Nearly 2,000 vessels, everything from massive dreadnoughts to converted mining ships, had gathered for what would likely be the decisive battle of the war. Status report, he requested from Captain Hayes. All ships report ready. Admiral, stealth hull systems are operational across the fleet. Quantum torpedo stockpiles are distributed. The Wolf 359 star itself has been prepared according to Dr. Clark's specifications. Morrison nodded grimly. The star had been seeded with specially designed Genesis protocol resonators, a desperate gambit that could turn the tide of battle, but at a terrible cost. And the civilian evacuation? Complete. No non-military personnel remain in the system. Good. Morrison took a deep breath. Now we wait. They didn't wait long. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the massive energy signature of the Council's Grand Armada entering the outer reaches of the Wolf 359 system. My God, breathed Hayes, as the tactical display populated with enemy signatures. There must be over 100,000 ships. Morrison's expression remained impassive, though his hands tightened on the command chair. Battle formations. All ships activate stealth systems and proceed to designated coordinates. We cannot match them ship for ship. We'll use the system itself as our weapon. Throughout the human fleet, advanced stealth technology engaged, rendering the vessels nearly invisible to conventional sensors. According to Dr. Clark's briefing, the Council would still detect energy signatures, but would be unable to get clean targeting locks, forcing them to advance deeper into the prepared killing ground. Aboard the Council command ship, Chancellor Veltar had taken personal command alongside Warlord Thakron. He watched with satisfaction as the massive armada spread out in standard englobement formation. Curious, Thakron noted, studying the sensor readings. We're detecting energy signatures consistent with a large fleet, but cannot get precise locations. Some kind of stealth technology. Veltar dismissed. Irrelevant against our numbers. Begin the advance. All ships. Commence firing as soon as targets are acquired. The Grand Armada moved forward. Tens of thousands of vessels firing blindly into the apparent positions of the human fleet. Most shots went wide, dissipating harmlessly into space, but the sheer volume of fire ensured some found their marks. Aboard the Defiance, Morrison felt his ship shudder as a glancing hit penetrated their stealth field. "Damage report!" "Minor damage to decks 14 through 17, came the response. "Stealth field holding at 87%. Morrison nodded. "They're advancing exactly as predicted. All ships maintain position. Activate Genesis protocol devices on my mark." Throughout the Wolf 359 system, human vessels had strategically positioned dozens of the reality-warping Genesis devices. Unlike their defensive use at colony worlds, here they were positioned as offensive weapons, aimed at key regions of space the Council Armada would have to traverse. "Council forces have reached optimal position," Hayes reported. "Genesis activation in 3, 2, 1. "Execute," Morrison ordered. Across the battlefield, the Genesis devices activated simultaneously. What followed defied conventional description. Vast sections of space-time began to warp and distort. Regions of normal space suddenly became impossible geometries. Natural laws became suggestions rather than rules. The effect on the Council fleet was catastrophic. Thousands of ships, suddenly caught in space where the normal laws of physics no longer applied, were torn apart or transformed in ways their designers never conceived possible. Matter itself rebelled against its standard configurations. In one sector, space folded in on itself, causing 200 Council dreadnoughts to occupy the same coordinates, with predictably devastating results. In another, the local speed of light reduced to mere kilometers per second, causing energy weapons to solidify into strange crystalline structures mid-flight. "What is happening?" Veltar demanded, as the tactical display showed massive losses across the fleet. "This is impossible!" Thakron's reptilian features were grim. "They've weaponized reality itself, Chancellor. They're not fighting our ships. They're fighting us with the fabric of space-time." "Order the fleet to pull back," Veltar commanded, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Get them out of these distortion zones." But retreat proved as deadly as advance. As Council ships attempted to flee the affected regions, they encountered new distortions opening behind them. What had been safe passage minutes before became twisted death traps. Aboard the Defiance, Morrison watched the chaos with a mixture of awe and horror. "Prepare for Phase 2, he ordered. "All ships target the remaining Council formations with quantum torpedoes." The human fleet, emerging from their stealth positions, launched a coordinated attack against the now disorganized Council Armada. Quantum torpedoes streaked across space, each one creating more localized distortions that consumed enemy vessels. "Council forces are breaking formation," Hayes reported, unable to keep a note of disbelief from her voice. "Sir, I think we're winning." Morrison didn't reply immediately, watching as the supposedly invincible Grand Armada disintegrated into panicked, individual retreats. "Signal Dr. Clark," he finally said. "Prepare the Wolf 359 primary resonator. Let's end this." At the heart of the Wolf 359 star, the largest Genesis protocol device ever constructed, had been carefully positioned weeks earlier by automated drones. Unlike the smaller devices, this one was designed to temporarily alter the fundamental forces within the star itself. "Resonator activated," came Dr. Clark's voice over the comm. "Admiral, once this process begins, we'll have 30 minutes to clear the system before the star undergoes a controlled phase shift. Nothing within 3 light hours will survive. Understood, Doctor. All vessels. Commence immediate withdrawal to fallback positions. Repeat. All vessels clear the system. As the human fleet executed a coordinated retreat, the remaining Council ships found themselves in disarray. Some followed, attempting to pursue what they perceived as a human withdrawal. Others continued to struggle against the reality distortions still active throughout the system. Aboard the Council command ship, Veltar stared in disbelief at the casualty figures. Of the 100,000 vessels that had entered the Wolf 359 system, fewer than 40,000 remained operational, and more were being lost by the minute. "Order a full retreat," he finally commanded, his voice hollow. "All ships, disengage immediately." "Chancellor," Thakron warned, "our sensors are detecting an unusual energy buildup within the star. Some kind of artificial resonance pattern." Veltar's compound eyes widened in alarm. "These humans! What have they done?" He slammed his appendage on the ship-wide comm. "All vessels! Emergency faster than light jump! Evacuation coordinates! Move!" The human fleet, having prepared for this maneuver, executed their withdrawal with precision. Council ships, hampered by confusion and damage, struggled to coordinate their escape. When Wolf 359 underwent its phase shift 28 minutes later, over 15,000 Council vessels were still within the affected zone. The star didn't explode. It transformed. For a brief, impossible moment, the fundamental forces governing its nuclear reactions realigned. The result was a wave of exotic particles and warped space-time that expanded outward at near light speed, obliterating everything in its path. From a safe observation distance, Morrison watched the sensor readings in silence. "Casualties?" he finally asked. "Estimating 30,000 Council ships destroyed by the stellar event," Hayes reported. "Combined with earlier losses, they've lost over 60% of the Grand Armada, sir." Morrison closed his eyes briefly. The scale of destruction was difficult to comprehend. Millions of alien lives extinguished in what amounted to an artificially induced cataclysm. "Open a channel to Earth," he ordered. "The Emperor needs to know what's happened here." The news of the Battle of Wolf 359 spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. What had been intended as a simple subjugation of an upstart species had instead resulted in the most devastating defeat in the Council's 2,000-year history. The political fallout was immediate. Several of the younger Council member species, long chafing under Elder race dominance, declared neutrality in the conflict. Others went further, reaching out to the Terran Empire with offers of alliance or, at least, non-aggression pacts. On Earth, Emperor Kane received these diplomatic overtures with cautious optimism. In a private meeting with his closest advisors, he outlined his vision for the aftermath of the conflict. "We've demonstrated that humanity cannot be subjugated," he told them. "But military victory alone isn't enough. We need to reshape the galactic order, create something better than the Council's tyranny." Admiral Carter, who had commanded Earth's defenses during the crisis, nodded in agreement. "The Genesis weapons give us leverage, but they're too dangerous to use routinely. We need a diplomatic solution that ensures lasting peace." "Which is why I've been drafting what I'm calling the Terran Accords," Kane replied. "A new framework for interspecies cooperation based on mutual respect and consent rather than domination." Dr. Clark, who had been unusually quiet since reports of the destruction at Wolf 359, finally spoke. "Your Majesty, the technology we've unleashed, it can't be put back in the box. The ethical implications of weapons that can warp reality itself are precisely why we need a new galactic framework," Kane finished. "These weapons should never have to be used again. That's the point of the Accords." Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from the defensive perimeter. "Your Majesty," reported the duty officer, "we're detecting a small Council task force approaching Earth. 5 vessels only, including Chancellor Veltar's personal flagship." Kane exchanged glances with his advisors. "Not an invasion force." A diplomatic mission, Admiral Carter suggested. Or a final, desperate strike. Either way, we'll meet them openly, Kane decided. Alert Admiral Morrison to bring the Defiance to Earth. If this is to be the final confrontation of this war, I want our best commander leading it. 3 days later, Chancellor Veltar's small flotilla entered Earth orbit under the watchful eyes of the fully mobilized home fleet. The solar system had been transformed into a fortress during the conflict, with Genesis protocol devices positioned throughout, a fact made abundantly clear to the Council vessels as they approached. Chancellor Veltar requests permission to board the Defiance for direct negotiations with Terran leadership, reported Captain Hayes. He's coming alone, as a gesture of good faith. Morrison nodded. Grant permission. Inform the Emperor. The meeting took place in the Defiance's conference room, neutral ground between Earth and the Council. Emperor Kane, flanked by Admiral Morrison and Dr. Clark, watched as Chancellor Veltar entered, his 8-limbed frame moving with deliberate dignity, despite the circumstance. Chancellor, Kane greeted him formally. This is an unexpected honor. Veltar's mandibles clicked once. Emperor Kane, I come representing what remains of the Council unified position. Many members have reconsidered their stance on Terran independence. After Wolf 359, I imagine they would, Morrison commented dryly. Indeed. Veltar turned his compound eyes toward the Admiral. You commanded that battle, I believe. A most impressive demonstration of military innovation. Innovation born of necessity, Kane interjected. We sought only to defend our right to exist freely. Veltar made a gesture that might have been acknowledgement. The Council has existed for 2 millennia. Emperor. In that time, we have encountered hundreds of emerging species. Some were integrated. Others were contained. None have done what humanity has accomplished in mere weeks. And what is that exactly? Kane asked. You have broken the Council's monopoly on power, Veltar stated simply. Half our member species have declared independence or neutrality. Our military strength is shattered. The old order cannot be restored. The Chancellor placed a data crystal on the table. Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. I am authorized to offer terms of surrender. A heavy silence fell over the room. The concept of the ancient, powerful Council surrendering to humanity, a relative newcomer to interstellar politics, seemed almost inconceivable. Surrender, Kane repeated carefully. Not armistice or ceasefire. Those options were considered inadequate given the strategic reality. Veltar replied. The weapons your scientists have developed render conventional military advantage obsolete. We cannot win this conflict through force of arms, and continuing it would only result in further devastation. Kane studied the alien leader, noting the subtle signs of strain in his posture. What terms do you propose? The remaining Council loyalists will recognize full Terran sovereignty and the independence of all human colonies. Non-aggression pacts with a duration of no less than 100 standard years. Technology exchange protocols under neutral oversight. Morrison and Dr. Clark exchanged surprised glances. These were remarkably favorable terms. And in return, Kane asked, a cessation of hostilities. Guarantees that the Genesis technology will not be used against our worlds. And, Veltar hesitated, your participation in establishing a new galactic governance structure to replace the Council. Kane leaned forward. You're proposing we help create a replacement for the very institution that tried to subjugate us? I am proposing we build something better, Veltar replied with unexpected candor. The Council's ways are outdated. This conflict has made that clear. Many of us have recognized this for centuries. But change comes slowly to institutions that measure their existence in millennia. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, considering the implications. Finally, he retrieved a datapad from his aide and placed it beside Veltar's crystal. As it happens, Chancellor, I've been working on a framework for just such a new beginning. I call it the Terran Accords, though the name is less important than the principles. Mutual defense, technological cooperation, respect for sovereignty. A galactic assembly where decisions require genuine consensus, rather than the dictates of the eldest members. Veltar's multiple eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. You anticipated this outcome? I hoped for it, Kane corrected. War was never our objective, just the freedom to determine our own destiny among the stars. The Chancellor picked up the datapad, scanning its contents. These accords, they would apply equally to all signatories, even humanity. Especially humanity, Kane confirmed. Power without accountability corrupts all species. Chancellor, we've studied enough of galactic history to recognize that pattern. Veltar set the pad down, his posture straightening. I will need to consult with my remaining colleagues, but this framework has merit. It could be the foundation for something sustainable. Then, let's consider this the beginning of peace negotiations, rather than surrender terms, Kane suggested. More dignified for all involved, I think. Dignity, Veltar repeated, with something that might have been a chuckle. A curiously important concept across most sapient species. Very well. Emperor Kane. Peace negotiations it shall be. 3 months later, on the neutral colony world of Haven, representatives from 27 species, former council members, independent worlds, and human colonies alike, gathered to sign the Haven Concordat, based on Kane's original Terran Accords. The ceremony took place in a transparent dome overlooking Haven's pristine azure oceans. Emperor Kane, as the architect of the agreement, spoke first. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, not as elders and newcomers, but as equals, united in our desire for a galactic community based on respect rather than domination. The recent conflict has shown us all the cost of the old ways. Today, we choose a different path. One by one, the representatives approach the central table to add their signatures or equivalent marks to the Concordat. Chancellor Veltar, now serving as the transitional representative of the former council races, was among the last. A wiser path, he remarked quietly to Kane as they stood side by side. Though wisdom often comes at great cost. A cost all our peoples have paid, Kane acknowledged, which is why this agreement explicitly prohibits the use of reality-altering weapons, except in cases of existential threat to all signatories. The Genesis Protocol will be secured under multi-species oversight. You trust us with such knowledge? Veltar seemed surprised. Trust, but verify, Kane replied with a slight smile. The Concordat establishes the Guardian Fleet, ships and crews drawn from all member species, answerable to the Assembly rather than any single government. They will serve as peacekeepers and monitors of the weapons we've agreed to contain. Veltar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Your species continues to surprise, Emperor Kane. Most conquerors in galactic history have hoarded their advantages. We were never conquerors, Chancellor, just survivors who found a better way. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Morrison approached the Emperor. The veteran commander had been appointed as humanity's first representative to the Guardian Fleet's Command Council. Quite a change from that war room meeting a few months ago, Morrison observed. Hard to believe we were facing extinction then. The universe rewards adaptation, Kane replied. Something humanity has always excelled at. He gazed out at the assembled delegates, now mingling freely. Do you think it will last, Jake? Morrison considered the question seriously. Peace is always harder than war, Your Majesty. But for the first time, we're building something based on mutual interest rather than fear. That's a foundation that might actually hold. Then our job is to ensure it does, Kane said firmly. For all our sakes. 5 years after the signing of the Haven Concordat, Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of Guardian Station, watching as a joint human-Iranian science vessel departed on a mission to study spatial anomalies in the Horsehead Nebula. Captain Hayes, now his executive officer on the station, joined him at the viewport. The cooperation is launching tomorrow as well. First ship to use the combined drive technology from both our species. Morrison nodded, a sense of satisfaction warming him at the sight of former enemies working together. Dr. Clark would have been proud to see it, his work on quantum physics finally being used for exploration rather than weapons. Hayes was quiet for a moment, remembering the brilliant scientist who had passed away the previous year. He never fully forgave himself for creating the Genesis Protocol, even knowing it ended the war and probably saved humanity. The burden of creation, Morrison mused. We build things without fully understanding their implications, then have to live with the consequences. Speaking of consequences, Hayes said, changing the subject, the Assembly has approved the expansion of the Guardian Fleet. 3 new peacekeeping vessels, crews drawn from 5 different species each. Including the Drakari? Morrison asked, referring to Thakran's species, which had been among the last to join the Concordat. 2 Drakari officers assigned to each ship, Hayes confirmed. Warlord Thakran himself recommended them. Apparently, he's become quite the advocate for the new order. Morrison smiled slightly. People change when given the chance. Species, too, it seems. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The galaxy was not perfect. Border disputes still arose. Pirates and outlaws still operated in the shadows, and ancient prejudices didn't disappear overnight. But for the first time in millennia, the dominant paradigm was cooperation rather than subjugation. Hayes said eventually, when the Council issued that ultimatum, I never imagined we'd end up here. Morrison thought back to that moment on the Defiance's bridge, when Veltar's transmission had seemed like the beginning of the end for humanity. Neither did I. I thought we were fighting for survival. And instead, we ended up creating something better than what came before. Hayes shook her head in wonder. History takes strange turns. That it does, Captain. Morrison agreed, his gaze fixed on the endless stars beyond the viewport, no longer a battlefield, but a frontier of possibility. That it does.